A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay from a slightly different location. No, we're not in some exotic restaurant or fabulous wine farm or equally cool spot. No, they're just some renovations going on in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar. What am I doing? I'm actually putting in more security, and that is because my wife keeps nicking all my best wine, so we're busy getting that done. So over the course of the next few months, you'll see Dan Really Likes Wine pop up from a number of different locations, this being one of them. But while the location changes, the nature of the show does not. We continue to chat to really cool people, drink really cool wine, and celebrate the fact that South Africa in particular has just got such a wonderful industry that has never needed your support more. And there is plenty of support going on, and I'm loving seeing it. People talking about wine, drinking wine. You will have heard me in the past mention the extraordinary commitment that Pick n Pay has shown to buy 25 million bottles of wine, 25 million bottles of wine from South African producers in 2021. And that's going to go a long way to helping the industry emerge from the trouble and strife of 2020. And we'll be doing what we can through Dan Really Likes Wine to support that very cause. And the best way to do it is to meet the people behind the wine, to share their stories, and to share the fabulous wine that they continue to make. And today I do that with two terrific people. We've actually been chatting offline before the show started. We should have just started the show then, because they're two great entertainers and two guys with a lot of wonderful wine stories to tell. Just a little later in the show, we'll be heading up to Darling and going and joining the team at Groote Post, and Lucas, who is the winemaker, who is not only in the middle of harvest, he's already bottled one of his wines. How quick is that? We'll find about that, chat some bubbles. It is 50 years of Cup Classique, and also try the Groote Post Old Man's Blend, which is a favorite of so many people. But before we do that, we head to an estate that offers one of the most majestic views in the South African wine world. And that's not to be said lightly, because we've got so many estates that look over such picturesque corners of South Africa. But even by our South African standards, this one is pretty special. You stand on the deck, you look out across the water, there's Table Mountain over in the distance, Robben Island. On a clear day, you can see miles as you look out from Durbanville Hills, which doesn't just have aesthetic beauty in its favor, it's also got some terrific wine and a winemaker who is something of a national treasure. Martin Moore is our first guest this evening in the middle of harvest. What a sacrifice to make. Martin, a very good evening. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. I hope we don't get a winemaker walking past in the back.
It'll just add to the sense of place and the sense of occasion. And we've got the main winemaker with us, which is great. And it's also a sacrifice, because this is the busy time of the year. How's harvest going at Durbinville Hills?
Well, it's quite a late vintage. I think everyone in the industry is talking about 2 weeks late. So we started off sort of only really getting busy mid-February. And at this stage, I reckon we're right about halfway. Most of the whites are in, fortunately, because with the weather that we're expecting, the season was actually quite cool and cold. So we needed a bit of heat, and at the end of February we got fairly extreme heat, especially on that last Sunday in February. But that seemed to put a bit of a boost behind the grapes in ripening. So it's quite a funny year volume-wise. People ask me whether it's a big or small crop. Some of my farmers are actually quite up in their crops, while some of them are very, very lower down. So I don't know if you call that an average crop if you're standing with 1 foot in the fire and the other one in the ice bucket. But that's more or less what it's like with the farmers with their crop sizes.
It's a terrific analogy, and it's one that you have much time to reflect upon, because your career is a long one and it's a distinguished one, and it goes back a fair way. Take us back to the times of black and white footage, if you will, Martin, and those early days. How did you get into the wine industry, and how did those first days compare and contrast to where you find yourself in the wine world today?
Well, actually, I grew up in Worcester, so a lot of my friends came from wine farms, which is probably why they didn't end up on wine farms. But so I spent a lot of weekends with them on the farm, and I had an extremely good agriculture teacher at school. So for me, coming from a family of builders, it was clear that I'm not going to go into the building industry, so I went into agriculture. Ended up having a bursary from KWV. So I ended up doing my first, started my career there. And at 27 years old, I was a head cellar master. And it was just too quick, too many winemakers under my feet. So when the opportunity came at Groote Post, I went there. That gave me a very good cool climate experience. Cool climate winemaking is different. Lucas will tell you that. It is definitely different from the warmer areas. And then the opportunity came up with Durbanville Hills. And guess what? I was almost a builder. We had to build this place from scratch, which my psychiatrist reckoned in about 5 years straight time I will be able to use the word builder without a prefix. So, but luckily the place is alive and well, and it's extremely well designed, modern cellar, which was designed for making quality wines in volume, which is the two that we have here is exactly that. And then through the years, we built a small cellar within the big cellar where we have our Collector's Reserve range and then the Tangram range right on top. But I selected these two wines because they are so popular. And after lockdown, I'm afraid some people might have forgotten them. So I just want to reintroduce them to the market again.
Well, I'm very happy that you have, and we're going to be opening them up in just a moment. I'm fascinated, though, by the career that's led you to where you are today, and just the stories you were telling us before we came on air were terrific. You mentioned some time in France. What has the scope of your career, the traveling, the spending time in places like France, done in terms of making you the winemaker you are today?
I think if you look at, I've traveled quite a lot, and I worked in France, but I've spent time in New Zealand for a certain period, especially because of I was making so much Sauvignon Blanc and selling a bit there, which sounds fair. But I think, in all honesty, in what I saw in France is you also learn by a lot of things that they do wrong. If you look at that hygiene, for instance, the place I worked in, where a couple of other guys worked, I think it's going to be disastrous if they get global warming, because the only thing that keeps those cellars safe is the fact that the cellars are so cold. So I've learned a couple of very good techniques, but what I like about the French is that it's all about the principle. You get it in some wine growing regions that if I look at America, for instance, and a couple of those regions where I spent time, it's very, very automated and unpersonal. And then you find the difference in France. It's actually very personal. If you say something bad about someone's wine, you'll probably get killed. And that's what I like about South Africa. I think we've got a sort of an attitude and a way of working right in between the two. So we will make use of technology if it's available and it's going to make better wine, but we're also not going to go overboard and forgetting principles of winemaking.
Which all brings you to where you are today, which is at Durbinville Hills. And it's an estate that's got such an extraordinary name, and it's hard to find a wine list as an African restaurant where you don't find a bottle of Durbinville Hills. We've got two of them are going to open right now. You mentioned earlier making quality wine, but making them in significant volumes. How do you get that balance right, Martin, where you've got wine, especially your collector's reserve, some of the more limited edition wine you've got, which is exceptional, and then at the same token, you're making very big volumes of wine like the wine we're going to drink today. How do you manage that? How do you ensure that you get it right, you get that balance just perfect?
I think people underestimate and I've through the years, I've had that question many times, is how do we maintain this consistency from year to year, that you don't have bad vintages? And in all honesty, I think we're sitting in an extremely good area with two bays. A lot of people talk about two oceans. It's actually two bays, False Bay and Table Bay, very close to us. So we don't get extremes. In the moment it starts getting warm, and I hear other guys complaining about heat waves, remember, cool air goes up. So the moment it gets extremely warm, warm air goes up, and cool air comes in from one of the two bays, and that is a savior on its own. But then, if you look at the scale, we're sitting with 9 farmers here, which are shareholders, and every vintage is different. But I always say that climate gives you the personality, and then the season sort of shows you a bit more about the attitude of the wine. but the personality stays the same. So for Sauvignon Blanc, for instance, we've got a valley of 11 kilometers long, different heights. It's really the old world terroir driven. And what I don't get, I get certain flavors. I need a big profile of flavors, especially for the Sauvignon Blanc, to be able to make the blend and get the consistency. And what happens from season to season is that you find that you will get the flavors, the same flavors somewhere in the valley. They change spots depending on the amounts of wind and the amount of cool air that comes in. But you always get the diversity in the area. And that's why with the solid winemaking team that I've got in the cellar, it gives me a lot of time. I spend the whole morning in the vineyards, for instance, and to find those different spots and see where they are, and then pick them at the optimum ripeness or the optimum flavor profile. So I spend a lot of times on Sundays tasting through with no one bothering me to see on the Sauvignon Blanc blend the tanks that we have in the cellar. What do we have of the certain elements, and what are we lacking? And then I'll go out and I try and find those. Sometimes the farmers get a bit upset because I tell them that they're going to pick later. I want higher sugar. I want more intensity. So the whole blend is basically made up outside in the vineyards to ensure that we have the components that once we start blending, that we have the components to play with.
Well, let's have a first crack at those components, because I cannot wait any longer to try some of the wine. It's well past starting time. And I haven't actually opened this bottle yet, Martin, for very good reason, because if you are to pick up a bottle at your local Pick and Pay, you'll see not just a bottle of wine, but you will also see this particular item. It is a reusable aerator and pourer, which are just, as the sign says, tear off there. Voila. As I aerate and pour, give me the expert reason, Martin. Why am I doing this? Why does it make my wine a little better?
It's actually a funny thing that we found that I had the same question through the years about decanting wine, and I found that with older wines they definitely benefit from decanting. But what we found nowadays we're drinking wines younger and younger, and they definitely open up. We at some stage when we made wines here, the Hills range that we were selling were 5 to 6 years old. We're now sitting with a 2018. I don't know if you've got the 2018 or 19 there of the Merlot.
I've actually the Merlot. I have got the 2019.
Yeah, 2019. So you see, we're on the market with the 2019, and the wine is so friendly. The way that we make it, I don't think people. If you look at what I've seen from my start of my career in the industry, the technology and equipment that became available during that period, that was developed during that period, is incredible. But what I find with these with the young wines is that they do benefit from a bit of air. There was a lot of gadgets that came into the industry that it was just sort of nice to have or nice to show around, but they didn't really make a difference on the wine. That specific one that you have, I haven't tried yet, but we do have some in the cellar that we pour with, which it's got that spinning thing on the inside, which aerates. You just stick it in the neck of the bottle and pour, and they really make a difference.
So you might look at it, you might think, oh, this is just another silly marketing gimmick from a wine estate. It's actually quite useful. It's simple to use, and as you can see, da-da.
That's the one that I'm talking about. That's the one that we use.
It's all right. So it's added to an already appealing glass of wine. From what is, I think it's fair to say, this is as iconic as Sauvignon Blanc as we've got, Martin, because you walk into a huge number of South African restaurants, and on their wine list, if you look in the white wine section, you will find Durbinville Hills Sauvignon Blanc. I remember when I was first stumbling my way rather awkwardly through the world of wine, Durbinville Hills Sauvignon Blanc cropped up time and again. And it's a wine that we know Durbinville is a Sauvignon Blanc area, and it's celebrated rightly so. But Durbinville Hills has consistently just managed to deliver this wine that South Africans absolutely love.
It's well, that's our pride and joy, because that was a challenge in the beginning. Otherwise, I would have been fired a long time ago. With Sauvignon Blanc, we're now doing a Chenin as well, which is doing well. But I was actually the culprit when I came here. There was some good Chenin in the soil, And as an arrogant little youngish winemaker, I asked the farmers to remove all the Chenin because it's standing in the place of Sauvignon Blanc. And that was more or less a stance that we took from the beginning. And luckily that worked for us. That we got a very good reputation for Sauvignon. The challenge actually after that was to let people know that we've got other wines as well. And that took a bit of a while. And then suddenly the others just started flying off the shelves as well, especially the Merlot.
Have you had kind of death threats from Ina Smith and Ken Forrester finding out that you removed all that Chenin Blanc?
I'm afraid of them, so we've replanted quite a bit.
All right. Well, look, you can justify it, even if Ina will burst into tears hearing that story again, because your Sauvignon Blanc is so established. What is it? Just in very simple terms, why do you get Sauvignon Blanc so right?
Well, it's obviously a bit of luck involved. No, it's location. If you look at the area, it is heaven for Sauvignon Blanc. So what we've done through the years, and that was probably the most dramatic exercise that I had to go through, was that I picked it up in the Nordic countries. I got the question, and then I got it again in Canada, and that was about 2002, 2003. I got the question about people that say that what is it in Sauvignon Blanc? Because that was a bit of a negativity. What is it in Sauvignon Blanc that if you swallow it, you get that bit of a irritation, and you don't get it on this one because we changed practices. At that stage, everyone wanted the Paris German wines, those green pepper stuff, and that was when the changeover came, and suddenly everyone wanted tropical. So we had to change our vineyard practices quite drastically, and working with good viticulturists, it's actually quite easy, because to break down malic acid, which is the irritating one here, and to break down pyrazine, you just need to get sunlight in. So it was very easy. Slack your trellis wires, get more diffuse sunlight in to break out some leaves. When in the past we kept everything very close in a VSP, a vertical shoot positioning system. I called it a calzone because I didn't particularly like it. It's like squashing all the good stuff inside in two pieces of pizza. And when we slacked it, then suddenly we started developing what we call thiols, which is the precursors of what gives you this tropical flavor. And it was a drastic change in style. But I think our timing was right. In that year, I actually wanted to take baby steps and do it over a couple of years. And suddenly, 2005 was a warm vintage. So we changed the wine. We got double the effect that I wanted. And the message from the market was clear then that is the right direction. So that's a style we've been sticking to since 2005.
And is it important when you're making a wine that is both this popular and made in these sorts of volumes, that if I pick up a 2020 and the last glass of Durbinville Hills Sauvignon Blanc I've had is a 2018, that setting aside the effects of aging, it's going to be pretty much a replica each year? Or are you allowing the winemaking process to give each vintage just that little bit of individuality?
We allow a bit of individuality, but it's funny enough that's pretty much a short-term characteristic that we find, that as the wine matured, they actually became very similar, and that's the personality of the wine. So some of these flavors that you get I'm actually quite interested in, and it's difficult to get research done on it or literature on it, is on the lifespan of thiols, how long they actually last as that fruity part. Because I think what distinguishes the cool climate Sauvignons is their longevity. I find a lot of people that when we change vintage, they actually ask me, and we keep a pallet or two back now when we change vintage, because I get people asking me, where can they still get the previous vintage? It's not that they don't like, they think the next one is bad. It's just too young for them. It's just too young and fruity. But that shows you that the wine's got a very good following of loyal drinkers that knows it so well that when you change the vintage, the changeover is too big for them, and they want the wine to get slightly older, like they like and know it.
It's amazing how many people insist they want their Sauvignon Blanc in the vintage of the year in which it is being drunk. but give them a wine that's a couple of years older and they'll be pleasantly surprised at just how good it is. Let's have a particular look then at this 2020. Talk me through it, Martin. What for you stands out in this particular glass?
I think something that we always get in the area is, you always will get with the way that we farm, you always get that gooseberry tropical flavor. But we've got a flavor that we get in the area that I call winter melon, and you get it on this wine. That green winter melon, when you cut through it, there's a certain flavor coming off. But I think the thing that really makes the wine work is because we're working with such a scale and different topography, heights, weather, wind. You can find two vineyards here next to each other where there's up to a 5-degree temperature difference on a given day if you go from the one to the other. And it's just whether the one is exposed to the wind and the other is not. But the windy one obviously being colder. So the development of flavors, we've got so many flavors to play with. So when we start blending, we try and pot themselves together like the winter melon style and gooseberry style, citrusy style. And then we start blending with those. So that gives you such a lot of complexity on the wine. I always tell people they must leave the wine for a while. And it's almost like a party trick, because what they smelled on it when it was colder, the moment it goes up a degree or so in the glass, it's a totally different set of flavors coming off.
And we're discovering that right now. It's it's a lot of fun to drink. It's one of the partners of the two wines we're drinking, and it leads to the question that I've asked one or two people before. I often ask Ken Forrester this question when it comes to Chenin. When you are so well known for a particular wine, as you are with your Sauvignon Blanc, how difficult does it make to remind the market that actually we can do other stuff and we do it rather well? We're about to try your Merlot. Is the other wine in the stable a bit more of a sell because you do your Sauvignon Blanc so well?
The others have, I almost think it's a different market. That if you look at the guy doing Chardonnay from Durbanville Hills, they're very outspoken about why they drink Chardonnay and not Sauvignon. So people definitely have their varietal preferences. The one that actually took off first after the Sauvignon was our Merlot. We're selling a lot of it, and that pulled it got people aware of the red wines that we have as well, and that started boosting Pinotage, Cab, Shiraz as well. And then on the white side, because the Sauvignon is so known, people were quite inquisitive when they started seeing the Chardonnay and the Chenin. And they also started moving because of that, because people wanted to try it to compare with the Sauvignon, and then they occasionally keep buying that as well. So the whole pack of the Hills range is actually selling very, very well.
All right, well, let's see if it can stand up to the excitement of the Sauvignon Blanc. This is the 2019 Merlot. Yes, it's young, but the advantage of Merlot as a grape is you can drink it a little younger. Oh, and very, very happily so. That cool breeze that you're famous for to make your Sauvignon Blanc, the conditions that allow Sauvignon Blanc. Merlot is a grape I love for that slight lightness of touch, for that beautiful fruit that comes through it. Does that same cool breeze help you to get the best out of this Merlot?
It does. The only difference that we have is we try and keep the Merlots also on the cooler slopes, but we keep them out of the wind. And none of your red varietals are too keen on direct wind on them, because it tends to make the skins harder as a grape protects itself. And then you get a lot of tannin coming out of it, a lot of tannic wine. So the Merlots are mostly planted sort of on the lower foothills on the valley floor, but also where it's exposed to this cool climate. Because what we want here, I still have a lot of Merlot outside. I've been picking a lot of Merlot today, which is quite late. And what we want on most of our reds is what we call hang time. Because of the cool climate, the sugar won't run away. It's a gradual ripeness between physiological ripeness and sugar ripeness. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages you have in cool climate, is that you don't have the situation where sugar just starts running and the grapes are still sort of not ripe. I mean, I still have Pinotage outside that I tasted today, and the skins are still hard, and the pips haven't released, and they're not totally brown. So I told the farmer, he said to me, when next week? I said, no, when after that? I don't know. It's got to ripen properly first.
And you've got some rain to come next week, so the harvest is certainly not a completed challenge just yet. Schalk Stapelberg watching. What a legend. Cheers, Martin, says Schalk. Good to hear from you, Schalk. Ina Smith, I'm here. Luckily, they now produce wonderful Shannon and have been winner twice of the Standard Bank Shannon Block Top 10 Challenge. Well done. Of course, we did announce that last year when he ran through the finalists. And Peter Pence, looking forward to some lekker wine conversations today. Greeting from Groote Post and Darling. And we'll be speaking to Lucas and the Groote Post team in just a moment. Before we do let you go, Martin, two for you. First of all, just a quick analysis, what you think this 2021 harvest is going to be like for Durbinville Hills. And then if I can ask you, just going back over the years, you've been making, drinking, producing fabulous wine. Is there one particular bottle that you'd sell a kidney for or swap your wife for, or that would be the defining bottle of wine of your wine career?
If I look at Durbinville Hills, some of the wines that we do a lot of tastings at the Vinotech, where some of our wines are stored. And rather than taking a single wine, I'll take a single vintage, which for white and red. 2007 was exceptional for white, and good for red. But the exceptional vintage for me was 2009. Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, Cabs, a whole lot. We still used to make the Rhinofields range at that time, and tasting at the Vinotech tasting, going through the 2009 reds was just an enormous experience. I wish I had more of that at home.
It sounds like I need to take up Albert's invitation to come down for a visit and do some important research with you, Martin, in the Vinotech at Durbinville Hills. Been lovely drinking some wine with you. We need to do it again soon, and I have promised I will come down. I do love visiting Durbinville Hills, so expect to visit soon. But in the meantime, good luck with the rest of harvest. Hope that pinotage comes through safely, and really appreciate the time, Martin, especially in such a busy period for you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Just fun because the other guys are working, doing my work.
Martin Moore, cellar master down at Durbinville Hills, giving us some of his many years of expertise. Josephine Prieur, on my last trip in South Africa, I tasted the Merlot 2018, superb, and hope to come back at Durbinville. Big hello to Martin. Josephine, lovely to see you back on the show. Hope all is going well over in France. Right, so we move from Durbinville Hills and its splendid views and its wonderful Sauvignon Blanc and its terrific winemaker in Martin Moore, and head out to Darling. Now, Martin reckons if he's looking from the top of Durbinville Hills, he can just about see Lucas from time to time making his way through the vineyards out in Darling, maybe just a little far away, but a great part of the winemaking world with some great people. Lucas is one of them. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm actually a little bit disappointed because I thought you were going to put me on the show for my cricket and rugby skills, but unfortunately,
your agent is very demanding, Lucas.
Yeah, next time I'll make it. No, but thank you very much, and thank you to the listeners, and thank you to Martin. It's great to do this tasting with this great winemaker that's been with Durbinville Hills so many years, and all the people listening. Great to have you. Thanks, Dan.
Great pleasure. And he's a great character. He's a great winemaker. And we have such a strong core of wine people in this country. And as each new generation comes through, they are inspired by the people ahead of them. And they, in turn, inspire those who come after. Martin's in a generation, I'm sure, gave you a lot of guidance as you're guiding young winemakers now. Who were the people for you early in your career who guided you along that path and helped shape the great winemaker we now have on the show this evening?
I think there's a few people that forced. I mean, you look at Canoncorp, people that was involved there. I had Martin. I had Charles Hopkins that played a very big role in especially for a lot of our young winemakers at that stage. That played a vital role in that, and we looked up to. It was quite a lot. I mean, you look at. Bayer-Streeter. I mean, Bayer-Streeter was amazing. He's still an amazing winemaker. Characters as well. Not only just a good winemaker, but also adding the charismatic part of being a good winemaker. I think when it comes with winemaker, you also you need to have a personality behind your wines. Not only making good wines, but the personality plays a vital role. And I think those personalities that played had a vital role on how I grow, and also international guys, but I think it's more when you look at the wines. There was a lot of people, and it's difficult to pinpoint all those people that had the influence on you. But I definitely, for me personally, was Charles Hopkins. He did a good job for me and inspired me to be a good winemaker.
You're not the first person who've referenced the influence that he not only had, but continues to have through his wine legacy. And it pushed you down the path, Lucas, to opt for wine instead of professional cricket or professional rugby. And I think the wine drinkers are very happy with that particular choice. Tell us a little bit about Groote Post, slightly off the beaten track, out in Darling. It's an enchanting part of the world. What drew you to Groote Post, and what do you feel is the real essence of the place you now call your winemaking home?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when I started, actually very interesting, when I came for my interview, I was still engaged with my wife. And at that stage, we're not married, so just engaged. And I told her, listen here, I've got this interview at Groote Post in Darling, and it's like, where's that? It's too far. I mean, but it's only an hour away from Stellenbosch. And so we went out. I still had a Bantam Bucky, and me and my potential that stage girlfriend went on the road, and we were on our way to Groote Post, and we were an hour late. I was so lost. You can't believe it. I was so lost, and I was an hour late. And I thought, you know what? I said to my wife, "We are late. Let's just finish this and get to the interview. At least do that." And I ended up being here. Maybe I was the only guy that made it here. So I met the Pence family, and they took me up to the vineyards. And it just, from that point, it was just amazing to see the absolute beauty of the potential of Darling or Groote Post grapes. And since then, I just thought, I need to work with this. It's potentially good for me. It's something new that I can do. It's a new area. It's not another Stellenbosch producer. Nothing against Stellenbosch producers, but nothing. Darling was coming onto the stage, and therefore I thought, wow, great people, fantastic to work with, and the potential of the grapes was just amazing. So yeah, Darling is a special place. I've been here for 21 years. It's quite a long time. So my wife stuck with me, and she's still with me. But great vineyards. I mean, we can work with so many different styles here. The opportunities. I mean, Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, Bubbly that we're going to taste a bit later. It stands out, and it's just an amazing area to work with. I think the main thing from Darling was the dryland conditions, the older vines, especially the Cinsaults. We talked about Tassenberg earlier. Cinsaults that was part of this area, was planted in the 70s. And I think that made Darling special. And suddenly when everything opened up, this potential pool was exposed and started to develop. And thank you for the Pence family to give me the opportunity to be part of it.
Tell us a little about that Pence family, because I know Peter's very heavily involved, but there's a long family tradition, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a particular member of the family who has inspired the now legendary Old Man's blend that we're going to be tasting just a little later.
Yeah, I know. Peter Pence is the junior. He's the man behind this whole thing. He's doing all this. The junior guy is doing this. I don't think that Peter Pence Senior will be able to do this, but he had such a big influence on where we are today, because he was a big dairyman. Yeah, he was the Farmer of the Year. He was also the International Dairy Personality of the Year. Exact dates, sorry about that, but I can't give it to you now. But he had such a big influence on agriculture, especially out of the dairy point, in influence that he had. the one thing he always told me is that when I got here is that, Lucas, you always have to do something different. And he told me, when you you don't know what to do, dye your hair pink. So I said to him, no, I'm not going to do that, but I'll try my best to do something new. And since then, we always had the chat. And I can remember when we started with the Old Man's Blend that at that stage it was, he always mentioned himself as the old man and the influence he has on the farm and still has. And he always referred to him as the old man. And that's the reason why we got to calling the wine the Old Man's Blend, the one that you see there, and which is fantastic. What a personality to work with, and also with Nick Pence. I mean, his son. It's fantastic. I mean, I don't think I would have been here 21 years if I didn't could have worked nice and together with them. It's fantastic. People that inspire you. I mean, Peter Pence inspired the guys, and especially for me.
It's a remarkable legacy to be 21 years at the same estate. We don't see that happen very often anymore. So clearly it's a terrific partnership. And I think you've done a great job in creating in Groote Post probably the only attraction that can match Peter Dirk Ace as Darling's greatest claim to fame. So well done there. And it's through some terrific wine that's admired by many people. Reginald Peckler up at Cheetah Plains. Excited to see you, Lucas. Groote Post will forever be a winner. My millions are on the Chardonnay. That's Reggie up at one of our top Sabi Sands resorts. And then someone whose name you might just recognize, Lucas, Peter Pence. What a blessing having Lucas as winemaker here at Groote Post. He is someone that truly lives the Groote Post brand. Now, I'm not sure if that is Peter or whether Lucas has logged into Peter's Facebook account, but either way, it's a very nice comment, and we'll post it.
I did. I asked him to.
All right, you haven't dyed your hair pink, certainly to my knowledge, but you have made some pink wine, and that's the first one that we are going to taste. It is Bubbles from Groote Post, and it ties in very nicely. Method Cup Classique in the 50th year of this particular style being part of the South African wine landscape. Just before we taste this particular one, it's a terrific year to be celebrating, and I think our Cup Classique genuinely does compete with the bubbles, whatever you might call them, in anywhere in the world, including some of the very best of the French. What does bubbles mean to you in South Africa? What does being 50 years old for Cup Classique mean to Groote Post?
Interesting enough is that this year I'm turning 50. So I'm also a 1971 model. So I'm basically, I was born in the year that Club Classique was started in South Africa. I think South Africa, for me, bubbly, let me go back to basically why I enjoy making bubbly is that bubbly is such an amazing product. I mean, people love it because of the, I think the bubbles in the wine makes it so much special. I think, especially for women consumers. I mean, it's just amazing. It has something special, and every bottle on its own shows its character. Almost, you can say that. I mean, it's you open a bottle of history, and for me, that's bubbly. What is bubbly about? To go back to how we started with bubbly is that it's not an easy thing to do. You know, it's not something that you start off that easy, because you need to build up a lot of stock to make it worthwhile to really get it into the market, which is very important. So it will take a few years to get there, and I think we're kind of in the way we are there. But in the beginning, it was kind of a struggle to get this going, because when I was at Elsenburg College, it was one of the products that or the wines that I had to work with for that specific year. So I made bubbly. And then I went to Lamott, and there I made a little bit of bubbly. So 3 years later, I went to Groote Post, and I always loved the product because I just felt that it's celebration. And I thought that Darling, because of the cooler climate, and we've got Chardonnay, we've got Pinot Noir, why not do it? So to convince the Pence family was it took me a while, about 3 years. So the first thing I did was to convince them to take some Merlot and make bubbly. So for the first 2 years, we used Merlot as the base for making bubbly. And then after that, because it became successful, we started using the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay, which was great. And here we are, 15, 17 years later, and we've really, it's not easy to make a good bubbly from the word go. Not probably for any wine, but when it comes to bubbly, it's how long can you leave it in the bottle. You know, it's very important to have that 15, 20 months on the lees in the bottle at least before you release it to make a special bubbly. And Rosé was our first one, because I think it probably started because of the Merlot, that there was more color in it. So kind of moved towards the Rosé. So we used 60% Chardonnay, and we used 30% or 40% Pinot Noir. So 60% Chardonnay, 40% Chardonnay, 60% Chardonnay, 40% Pinot Noir in this blend. And the reason why we do that is to still have that pink color, but also get that fruit from the Pinot Noir, which is so great that we have here naturally. And the Chardonnay just gives that backbone and structure to the final product.
It does, and yet despite all that, and I get all of that, there is on the finish, there's such a soft, smooth finish to this particular Cup Classique, and I'm not sure if it's just the style you adopt, if it speaks to the terroir and the conditions in which these grapes grow. But as delightful as it is, when it finishes, it just gently massages your tongue and disappears off into the night. It's so soft, it's so delightful. You've got a really lovely sense of balance here, Lucas.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that for you know what is very important when you have a wine is, at the end of the day, we drink it. We don't smell it. Smell is important. It's very important. But at the end of the day, when you taste it, you drink it, that must be in your mouth. You must enjoy it. And I think you're 100% right. This is just appealing, good acid, good balance to the end of the palate. And then you get this, at the end, you get this beautiful fruit explosion, which is coming from the Pinot Noir, which is unbelievable. But balance is very important. And I think to get that is the biggest challenge for any winemaker, to make sure that you carry on doing this year after year. And especially with the bubbly, because a bubbly takes 15, 20 months, like I said. I mean, this is 18 months in a bottle before release. And it takes some time. But I think I put my finger on it in a way, and I know what to do at this stage. So this beautiful acid fruit combination is what I need. And sometimes I think when you look at bubbly, it's not something that you need to leave for too long. And I think South Africa has the amazing MCCs, bubblies, that come out to really compete with champagnes, that especially when you look at bubblies that is earlier released. Our bubblies is fantastic for the price point. So people that are listening in tonight, I think when you very orientated French bubblies from South Africa at a 200 Rand price point is really drinking fantastic compared to French champagne. So.
It is indeed. And if you are a fan of Cup Classique, then it's one to add to your list, much as when we spoke a little earlier to Martin, I discussed how Sauvignon Blanc is so successful for them that perhaps some of their other wines live a little in the shadow. So this might not be something you even knew that Groote Post made, because their Old Man's blend in particular is so successful, but it is well worth giving a crack to. I suspect Elizabeth Bardin will be doing exactly that. Thank you for the commitment to making bubbly. Love it. Drink it, you will love it more. You mentioned getting the price and the quality into that really good space. I think you've done it well here. I think you've done it exceptionally with our follow-up wine, and it's the holy grail for any wine produced at a large volume, really, and that's getting a wine that is sufficiently good, while by the same token is not out of the reach of most people to buy. And you've got that with that Old Man's Blend. I think I picked this up at Pick and Pay for about 90 Rand today. And the moment I put it up on social media, immediately somebody came back, you have to have this bottle every time you're around a steak braai. And it's got that kind of iconic status. It's maybe not the bottle of wine that you're bringing out for your 50th wedding anniversary, or you've just signed a new deal, but you're around the braai, you're having a great afternoon with mates. This has become a pretty constant companion for so many South Africans.
Thanks for mentioning the 50th. I really appreciate that. But yeah, it's difficult to understand that you're getting 50. You know, when you turn 50, I mean, I can remember when I was little that when my father turned 50, it was like, wow, he's old. You know, now I'm 50 as well. So yeah, so I'm also the old man in a way. So, but I think the big thing about wine is that you have to give people something that they can drink and appreciate and still experience quality, which is very important. For me, that's you don't want to give people wine that they have to struggle with. And when I arrived at Groote Post, there was wine. We had Pinot Noir and we had some Merlot. So that was the two red varietals that we had at that stage. And so when I arrived here in 2001, that from the previous vintages, there was still left over. And I thought the wines are great, but we can't put everything for the Merlot or everything for the Pinot Noir. So I approached the Wine Society, Wade Bales, and I asked him, listen, will you be okay with if I do a red blend for you, but it's going to be a Merlot Pinot Noir? It's like, a bit difficult, but let's see what happens. So we made a small volume of that. I think it's about 500 by 6 cases. Oh, it's not small, but I mean, it's fairly small for what they normally sell. And it was very popular. And so that went well. And Peter Pence, senior, not junior, he was still 3 years old then, came up to me and said, listen here, this is popular. Let's do something with this, and let's move on and bring it out to the people. And for me, that's and then he said he had this book about the old man and the boy, not the old man and the sea, but old man and the boy. And he said, listen here, he's the old man. He's not the old mutual. He's the guy that looks after this wine. So we made up this blend, me and Peter Pence, and we've decided on this beautiful style of wine, and we added a little bit of Cabernet later on, and we added some Shiraz later on, just to improve the wine. And I mean, it's just amazing. It's something that you can enjoy. I think wine is something that we need to enjoy. Maybe sometimes we complicate things too much, and I think in life that's in general. And this is the wine that you drink because you're not too complicated. It's a wine that you enjoy, and I think 80%, 90% of people enjoying this or drinking this will say, listen, wow, this is drinking great. And that's important for me, because that's why I made this wine, is to give to people something that they can enjoy and and have a relationship with, because it's saying the old man's blend. So you always have a relationship with your old man somewhere in your life. I had an old man, you have an old man, everybody that's listening tonight has an old man. So yeah, and that's the thing behind the whole story behind this old man's blend.
It's also a slightly worrying reminder, as you allude to, that both you and I are starting to slip into the old man space ourselves, sadly, Lucas. Although at heart, I suspect we shall both remain young for many, many years to come. I also suspect that when I drop round for a braai, which I promised to do at some point, this is quite likely to be a bottle that you'd bring out. And your mates come around on a Friday. This is something that even you, as the winemaker who's got everything you want out of a great cellar, you're going to bring some of this out just because it's something you really like drinking yourself.
I do, because I think what people must understand is that you're not having this wine because you it's not a cheap wine that we want to push out there and sell it to the people. I think a lot of people, that's not the idea. It's just, I want to make a wine because we've got this terroir to make something softer, more lighter. And so when I arrived at Groote Post, I realized that Darling is a more kind of milder climate, cooler climate that allows a red wine that's got softer tannins, and we can produce something like the Old Man's Blend. So that's the reason why we moved into this. And I mean, Dan, yeah, really, I mean, it's just a wine that, you know, at 90 Rand is just overproducing. I mean, it's drinking beautifully. It's soft tannins. And that's what's the idea, because I want you to tell me, come back to me, so listen, I had it with friends tonight, and I had 10 people, and 9 out of 10 loved this wine because we just enjoyed it. And that for me is the Old Man's Blend. And you know, you can talk big stories or whatever, everything, but the Old Man must be the wine that just people enjoy. You open the bottle and you just drink it because it's so special.
It's very enjoyable wine at an even more accessible price. So you've hit gold there. Just before I let you go and continue getting other people to do all the work for you at Harvest, because I know now how winemakers actually work. Talk to us very quickly about one of the other huge success stories from Groote Post. I actually went to find some. It was sold out everywhere I went today, and that is your sea salter.
Yeah, that was a pity, eh? Yeah, that's amazing. You know, it's always amazing to do something. You know, what you, as a winemaker, you want to do something special and something unique. And I mean, everything you do, and everything is unique. I'm not just saying the sea salter, but when we started thinking about the sea salter and to work with it, it was around about 2014. To do something different, to totally move from the Groote Post label to something totally different. And that for me was the beginning, you know, to do something that's, and interesting enough, it's not really something totally different, because when I started making wine, Sauvignon Blanc, most of the Sauvignon Blancs were barrel fermented, or called Blanc Fumé for that matter. I mean, that was in the middle 90s. And so since then, Sauvignon Blanc became more tank fermented, fruity style, which is interesting. And then, you know, I thought Sauvignon Blanc is going, and suddenly Sauvignon Blanc went into the stage of becoming very too fruity and too green and too, you know, I just heard people talking about the whole thing is that it's just too much, you know, of that acid and the expression of fruit. So I thought, wow, this is an opportunity to go back to our roots, where we started, where I started, for that matter, and do a little bit of barrel fermented. So this is a blend that has 20% barrel fermented wine for 3 months before we blend it. And the reason for that is to add a little bit of balance to the wine, just to break a little bit of the acid, to give a little bit of a complexity to the wine. You know, I remember my first tasting that I had with Sauvignon Blanc was, when they talk about it, they call it a donut wine. So there's a lot around the side, but nothing in the middle. And this is the wine that gives you more in the middle because of the wood component, the time it's spent on the lees. And that for me is the difference. So yeah, something different. And then combining with that, the stylistic wine is to do something totally different when it comes to the label. You know, our traditional label of Groote Post was totally different. And if you look at the label, it just says "drink me." You know, when you're sitting next to the ocean, that was not my idea. The wine is my idea, but that, I thought that was flipping amazing. It just says, it screams, "Come and drink me." And it's, you know, having a bottle of sea salter at a restaurant next to an ocean. That's probably what you want to do, and a wine that you can appreciate. I mean, it's approachable. It's got a good depth of fruit. It's got a good depth of acid, and that combination makes it unbelievable to enjoy with some food next to the ocean, or just with a bottle of wine. With even me and you having a bottle of wine at Eisenfontein, that would be great.
Of course, the seam of salinity that comes through it might lead you to think that it is sea salter. It's actually not. It's sea's altar. It's an altar to seafood being drunk with this fabulous, fabulous wine. Grant Sauls is watching, saying, I'll try the Old Man wine. Sounds good. That's a big call, because I'm not sure you will know him, Lucas, but Grant Sauls generally only drinks wine if it's made in half a barrel by Urban Sadi from 300-year-old bush vine Shannon grown on the underside of a cave in Pekiniaskloof. So he's got very specific taste. You're going to enjoy it, I think. Grant.
I can see it's matured. He's moved on in his life.
Oh dear. Lucas, you need to get back to your harvest. I've got to jump on to the Dan Nicholl show in about 3 minutes. I'll be heading off. What I will ask you to do, though, is look out for a couple of competitions. I'll mention the Durbanville Hills one in just a moment. But all week next week, every day, we'll be giving out 2 double tickets to Lucas's 50th birthday party at Groote Post, which I'm very excited about. So look out for that during the course of next week.
You're invited.
Lucas, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight hanging out with you. Good luck with the rest of the harvest, and look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it. And I see you on my 50th birthday.
Count me in. Count me in. Lucas Van Saul, they make 21 years now. That's an extraordinary stint. And I think the Pence family realise just how lucky they are to have had him there for that long, making terrific wine and a great range at that. Those bubbles are terrific. Right, that wraps us up for today. Before I say a final thank you, remember the Pick and Pay Wine Club. It's free to join. Simply SMS your smart shopper number through to 36775, and that will get you into the Pick and Pay Wine Club free of charge. Gets you 3 times the smart shopper points and all wines, 20% off 10 great wines every single month. And on top of that, you will also get access to some cool competitions. And one of those competitions is running right now. If you are buying this month any Durbinville Hills wine, you will go into a draw to win a prize of 5,000 Rand worth of Durbinville Hills wine. It's a terrific prize. It's only a Pick and Pay. You need to be a Pick and Pay Wine Club member, so become one. It's free of charge and great value. A huge thank you to Martin Moore from Durbinville Hills for being with us a little earlier on in the show, in the middle of harvest, celebrating that iconic Sauvignon Blanc, but also some very good Merlot, and the wines from Lucas Van Saul and the team at Groote Post. A delightful Cup Classique in the 50th year of Cup Classique being made in South Africa, as well as the Groote Post Old Man's Blend. It is a South African favorite, and tonight we reaffirmed exactly why. Thanks to everybody who's watching this evening and tuning in. If you're a sucker for punishment, you can join me on the Dan Nicholl Show Instagram Live in just a couple of minutes. I'll be joining Arno Buerta, the Bulls and Springbok loose forward, who's over in Munster, back now, the architect of that Blue Bulls Curry Cup victory. And if you want some more wine, some cool stuff happening next Monday, I'll be chatting to Skalk Willem-Joubert, the man behind Taibosh, the reborn Cordoba, making the crescendo in its new guise, and also chatting to Siabelo Sanekla, the Springbok Sevens player, who now, together with Whalehaven, is making his own wine. Promises to be a lot of fun. Currently up online is my time spent with the team at Colmont, with JP, as well as with Mr. Gerber. Paul making some lovely bubbles in Franschhoek. And look out for the next couple of weeks for an exclusive interview with the great Michael Freejohn. That does me for tonight. Huge thank you to both Lucas as well as to Martin and the team at Durbinville Hills. Have a great Thursday evening, and I'll see you back Monday night for more live tasting. Goodbye.